good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, wherever you're joining us from. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this panel discussion entitled Religious Freedom in Pluralistic Societies, Collective Responsibility in Countering Discrimination, Hatred, and Intolerance, organized by the Journalists and Writers Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mehmet Kılıç. I have the honor of serving as the president of the Journalists and Writers Foundation, an international civil society organization dedicated to the promoting peace, human rights, and sustainable development. The JWF is a 501c nonprofit organization registered in New York State and is associated with the United Nations Department of Global Communications. This event is a part of the observance of the World Interfaith Harmony Week, which provides an important platform for individuals, at the same time organizations, to reflect on peaceful coexistence, mutual respect, and shared values across diverse religious and faith traditions. Today, our goal is to foster understanding of religious freedom as a fundamental right essential for building peaceful and inclusive societies, to discuss how discrimination and hatred manifest within communities, and to emphasize the collective responsibility of society to promote tolerance. Before I introduce our esteemed moderator, I would like to inform you that the outcomes of this panel discussion, including your ideas, insights, and recommendations that will be shared by our speakers and participants, will be submitted to the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights as a part of their call for input on countering religious hatred constituting incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence. Unfortunately, there is a growing global concern regarding religious hatred and its severe impacts on human rights, prompting calls for stronger normative, legal, policy, and administrative responses. We will compile the results of this discussion into a formal written submission to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. We kindly invite you to share your insights, experiences, recommendations, and any questions via chat box during this session. Your contributions can make a meaningful difference in countering religious hatred, preventing discrimination, and providing human rights advocacy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed moderator, Dr. Rajendran Govender. Dr. Rajendran Govender is a dedicated advocate for social cohesion and a distinguished social anthropologist, currently serving as the South Africa Commission of the Rights of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities. And he is also a board member of the Pan-South African Language Board. As an influential voice in promoting inclusivity and understanding, Dr. Govender is an advisory board member and interfaith committee member of the Journalists and Writers Foundation, as well as the executive director of Mzansi Empowerment Enterprise. In addition to his advocacy work, Dr. Govender holds the position of former senior manager at the KZN Department of Arts and Culture in South Africa. In his recognizable figure in media, frequently appearing on national television and radio as a cultural commentator and contributing to insightful articles as a newspaper columnist. His expertise and commitment to fostering dialogue and unity were showcased during his participation at the UN General Assembly in 2021 in New York. Dr. Govender continues to play a vital role in shaping cultural conversations in South Africa and beyond. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rajendran Govender.
Thank you, Mr. Mehmet Kılıç from the Journalists and Writers Foundation. A very warm greetings to all distinguished members of this panel, organizers, and participants from all over the world. It is an absolute delight to be on this platform, and it's a privilege to moderate this important discussion during World Interfaith Harmony Week, a global reminder that peaceful coexistence is built through dialogue, respect, and shared responsibility. In our increasingly diverse societies, dear colleagues, religious freedom remains one of the most essential pillars of democratic life and social cohesion. Yet, across the world, we continue to witness discrimination, intolerance, hate speech, and identity based polarization. Addressing these challenges requires collective commitment from governments, families, faith organizations, educators, civil society, media, citizen, and all citizens alike throughout the world. As this analogy states, religious freedom is like oxygen in a diverse society. You notice it most when it is restricted and a whole body politic begins to struggle. Today's panel, Religious Freedom in Pluralistic Societies, Collective Responsibility in Countering Discrimination, Hate and Intolerance, brings together distinguished scholars, practitioners, and community leaders from different regions of the world. Our discussion will proceed in three parts. Firstly, an opening reflection from each panelist. Secondly, a moderated question segment. And lastly, closing reflections, pathways forward, where we will also accommodate a few questions from our attendees. And all these will be highlighting practical recommendations. I encourage each speaker to stay within time so that we can hear all perspectives. Let us begin with our first speaker. Our first speaker is Professor Dr. Rocio Cortes Rodriguez from Chile. He is an assistant professor of theology at the Pontifical Catholic University of Chile, with research focused on interfaith dialogue, particularly Christian Muslim engagement and intercultural theological approaches. Over to you, Dr. Rodriguez, with your opening reflection.
Thank you for the kind introduction and for being with us today. I'm very honored to be invited to share with you from the bottom of the world, from Chile, a little bit of what I have been working and reflecting upon interreligious dialogue, religious freedom, and so on. So thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this panel during the World Interfaith Harmony Week. I would like to begin with a simple but crucial distinction and clarification. While I know that all the contexts are different, during these years I have been living in different places, so I know that talking about something may not necessarily apply to all the contexts. However, from South America, I can share some details of what we are doing here in order to promote religious freedom and interreligious and intercultural dialogue. I believe that religious freedom is not only a legal principle, but also a lived social practice. So I hope that that can be a sort of horizon, how we move in our different environments. Legal frameworks are essential. Without them, minorities remain vulnerable, but laws alone cannot prevent discrimination, hatred, and polarization. We need to go deeper into that. These take root not only through extremist violence, but also through ignorance, fear, and everyday exclusion from the lunch table, from certain meetings, from groups in the school, universities, and so on. It can happen in schools, families, public discourses, ignoring minorities, and even well-intentioned institutions. Sometimes we make small mistakes that count into this fear or polarization that we may have among each other. Religious freedom is foundational to inclusive and democratic societies because it protects freedom of conscience, something that cannot be imposed or coerced. So we know it from our traditions, but also from the experience. When societies fail to protect religious freedom, they fail at a deeper level. They deny the dignity of persons whose identities, values, and moral frameworks are shaped by beliefs. From the Chilean experience, a country that established a full separation between the church and the state in 1925, we have learned that secularism does not entail erasing religion from society. Rather, it creates the conditions for plural coexistence, where different beliefs can contribute to the common good. 100 years after that constitutions, we are still working on how to integrate religious minorities. Religious discrimination rarely begins with violence, it begins with symbolic exclusion. When certain beliefs are treated as irrational or dangerous. And let me say that it can even happen within the same tradition. That's very sad because it's difficult to work with this. Intra-religious dialogue can sometimes be even more difficult to handle. Virgilio Elizondo, a theologian, a Catholic theologian, points out how tensions can take place in Catholic churches, for instance, in the United States, where Latin American migrants bring their religious celebrations and festivities, such as the devotion to the Virgin of Guadalupe, that are new to local people, and so they feel uncomfortable and sometimes fight against those practices, and therefore it creates unnecessary tension among parishioners. They are all part of the same community. However, there is a polarization due to the practice of different devotions, celebrations, and so on. Similar attitude has been reported in Chile, with migrants coming from Venezuela and Colombia. Both groups need to find ways to coexist. So here we are not having only interreligious, intercultural dialogue, but also intra-religious dialogue. When religion is reduced to a private hobby, something that we live at home, or we practice it during the weekends, with no public relevance, then we have another symbolic way of exclusion. Also, when minorities are spoken about, but not with them. So there is a distinction there when we talk about the others or when we speak or we talk with the others. Hatred
I think at
grows
that point,
where...
I think we will stop at this point now. Thank you so much
it
for
was...
such a great. It was
Yeah.
5 minutes, right? Thank you so much.
Okay.
Sometimes
It's
we
fine, it's
don't
fine.
keep.
There was
Thank
just
you,
one
thank you.
line.
It's absolutely brilliant reflection, right?
Thank you.
And to the attendees here today, you're gonna get jet lagged because we're traveling throughout the world. We just completed Chile, and we're now traveling to Europe to go to Spain, where we are meeting with Professor Dr. Joan Hernandez Serret. Right, is a professor of sociology at the International University of Catalonia and an interreligious dialogue leader with experience in religions for peace, Europe and Spain, focusing on social change and intercultural engagement. Over to you for your reflection, Dr. Serret.
Okay, thank you very much, distinguished members, friends, colleagues. First of all, thank you for inviting me and panelists, especially for pushing me to reflect on this topic, especially to celebrate this weekend, very important. We celebrate as well this interfaith weekend here in Spain, as I know in other countries here in Europe. I think that this topic is necessary to reflect together about the potentialities of this important interreligious dialogue in our society. And so we find that now ourselves as a historical moment, we uncertainty and fear coexist because we have no references for example, the social and technological change that we are experiencing, and also its effect, of course, in the interreligious dialogue in the situation. So in this challenging context, the religious freedom is not only an individual right, but also the cornerstone, the house light of social peace and democratic resilience. So democracy is not survived by alone, and so it requires that all the people, all the communities believe in that, and so these ecosystems of mutual respect, the trust, the empathy that must be cultivated in every sphere in our lives. And so for diversity be our greatest strength, we must to act in our every day, in our every sphere, and religious freedoms and tolerance sometimes we are not is absent and is regress into some authoritarian system that base their cohesion and uniformity in submission. And so we want to reflect about what happened if we do not have the interreligious dialogue, and so of following with the negative, especially in our society. First, the societal erosion and conflict, and so the interreligious dialogue need to this is a democratic laboratory on different phases can to work together and to show to our society that it's possible. The difference is enrichment for our society, and so I think that it's important that to work together, especially to broken the polarization, the lack of tolerance, erode the coexistence as social questions, feeding the social polarization and breaking a community fabric. And so this is more powerful and more symbolic expression, the interreligious dialogue in our society. Also, what happened with we have not institutional don't give support our interreligious dialogue. And so this is the violation of fundamental rights in our society. It's just unjust treatment, is violence and phobia. We need to create interreligious dialogue for avoid all the thing that is with the sociologists, the pathologies of our society. In this way, and from Spain, from Europe, I know that we working for promote the religious freedom and tolerance in different perspectives. For example, encourage the interreligious dialogue, interconvictional dialogue to promote the encourage mutual knowledge. We need that. We need to establish the neighborhood dialogue groups, creating a local groups that is normalize the religions in the diversity in daily life. We need to collaborate on social projects. The different religions usually to work together for collaborate, not for own religion, for own community, not for the society in general. So integrating the religious community in a common cause. This is a social cohesion, the interreligious dialogue to bring us a very opportunity to work for the social cohesion in our society. Of course, the interreligious dialogue also to promote a pedagogical resource, acknowledge another, the combat, especially the anti-rumor, the interreligious dialogue to combat the anti-rumor strategies, because sometimes in our society we leave the rumors about that and to create stereotypes, and the interreligious dialogue to neutralize, and it's necessary, like because this the rumors is the fueling on Islamophobia and also phobia pathologies. And so also it's important to inclusive institutional management to trying to identify how to adopt inclusive practice in the public service, especially, for example, in different how to manage to normalize the different tools or different dress for hijab, kippah, turban, and so it's
And I
necessary to
think
know.
it's the right point for us to stop. Beautiful
Okay.
reflection, very practical solutions. Excellent. Thank you so much, Professor Seret. It was a brilliant reflection. Ms. Ishka Iraman from the Republic of South Africa. She's an attorney and Vice Chairperson of the Hindu Unity Forum of South Africa, actively involved in community leadership, temple life, and youth formation initiatives that strengthen values-based social cohesion. Over to you for your reflection, Ishka.
Thank you, Dr. Govinda. Yes, so I am incredibly humbled to be on this panel with these esteemed colleagues. It's quite an opportunity. So, yeah, I love religion, and this is my take on the religious freedoms in pluralistic societies. So, yes, I do live in South Africa. We are a democratic country where religious pluralism is very much present. We see it in everyday life from our place of work, schools, and social surroundings. Religious freedoms obviously go hand in hand with respect, equality, freedom of expression, and freedom of association, among other freedoms. So my take on this is that pluralistic societies are fundamentally consist of varying viewpoints, which all need to be respected, and we need to consider everyone's viewpoints so that everyone gets a chance to feel included and respected. But at the same time, individuals also need to ensure that the viewpoints do not discriminate and cause hate. So, as much as we say that government has a duty to ensure individuals' rights are protected, we in South Africa, we have a constitution which protects religious freedoms and gives us other rights for religious freedom and equality, freedom of expression, and association. But as much as the government allows for these freedoms, I think it's also more important that individuals and religious organizations or social institutions they have a greater influence to ensure discrimination, hate, and intolerance doesn't result. I say this because individuals interact more socially and learn and adapt to the individuals that they interact with in religious organizations and social institutions. So I can speak from experience because I am part of the Hindu Unity Forum of South Africa. We aim to promote the Hindu voice. Obviously, people voicing their opinions and being heard is essential for human dignity, and it gives people a sense of pride and they feel included, and more so, I guess, they feel respected. So that's why we at HUFSA, we note concerns and we address it where need be. We also don't condone any discrimination. So yeah, for us, I think we can say that the voice of reason always prevails, and whenever there are issues that the Hindu community feels aggrieved by, we try to address it the best we can. I also believe that religious institutions is probably one of the most crucial aspects to avoid discrimination, intolerance, and hate. Religious organizations tend to breed fanatics and extremists. And these religious organizations and institutions can pacify their congregation because if they pacify their congregation and even educate their followers, then these followers will learn that, they don't have to always ensure their rights by putting down another's rights. So it's important that justice is fair and everything is looked at holistically. Yeah, so I am a Hindu and my religion preaches kindness and tolerance. It's a very inclusive religion and it includes a vast ideology. Belief and practices vary and anyone can practice Hinduism. So all is also welcome and never ostracized. So yeah, I think also when it comes to religion, education is essential. The youth and people in general always need to be educated. This will free them from ignorance, and I think they have it's always easier to accept things when you have full facts. And this is why I think education is the key factor in this. When I was in school back
Think at
then,
this point, Ishka, I would like to thank you and we would accept what your reflections have stated so beautifully. Thank you so much because the
thank
reason why,
you.
because we have to board a flight and a 16-hour journey. I hope you all fasten your seatbelts because we're traveling now to the United States of America, where we are going to be getting the reflection of Dr. Ali Unsal. Right. He's an Islamic theologian and writer, deputy director at the Wise Institute with extensive experience, very, very extensive experience in interfaith education and community initiatives across multiple countries, promoting peace and coexistence. With that, let's now get his reflection. Dr. Ali Unsal.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gavender. Thank you for the invitation to speak on this important panel. Today, I would like to address the erosion of in religious freedom in Turkey following the failed coup attempt of July 15, 2016. I will focus on how a particular religious tradition, its thinkers, its texts, and its followers have been systematically targeted. The case of Mr. Fethullah Gulen and the Hizmet movement, illustrates how religious freedom can be transformed from a protected right into a mechanism of exclusion, punishment, and social fragmentation. What I will argue today is simple but serious. In post-2016 Turkey, restrictions on religious freedom have not been applied in a general or neutral manner. Instead, they have been selective, targeted, and discriminatory. They have been focused primarily on Hizmet-related individuals, ideas, and institutions. This approach has directly contributed to polarization, social hostility, and a serious threat to social peace. After July 2016, religious identity and intellectual affiliation were increasingly treated as indicators of criminal intent. Religious books, sermons, and writings associated with the Hizmet movement were stigmatized and used as evidence in criminal prosecutions. These materials contained no call for violence, yet possession, recommendation, or study of them became grounds for prosecution. This practice extended beyond text. Numerous religious figures were dismissed from their position and separated from their congregations. Many had served for decades without any record of violence or political activity. They were removed not for what they had done, but for what they were believed to represent. Legal measures were accompanied by the public discourse of demonization. Hizmet members were described as traitors, terrorists, internal enemies, or even a virus. Such language produced moral exclusion and legitimized social hostility. When the rhetoric is endorsed by state officials, it ceases to be opinion. It becomes a social signal that justifies discrimination. One of the most visible consequences has been mass exclusion. Tens of thousands of professionals were dismissed through emergency decrees without individualized evidence. Informal blacklisting made employment nearly impossible. Passports were cancelled. Families were effectively trapped. In many cases, spouses and children suffered consequences despite no alleged involvement. This amounts to a form of civil death. Another deeply troubling development has been the polarization of mosques, politicization of mosques and Friday sermons. Spaces meant for spiritual reflection were worn into political messaging. Concepts such as fitna and betrayal were used to stigmatize specific religious groups. When religious language is used to marginalize others, faith itself becomes a tool of division. Discrimination has been particularly severe in detention settings. Many prisoners were denied access to religious books, communal prayers, and spiritual counseling. In some cases, this discrimination had fatal consequences. These cases remind us that religious discrimination is not abstract, it has human costs. Underlying all these developments is a serious erosion of the rule of law. In his meth-related case, association replaced action, intention replaced evidence, collective identity replaced individual responsibility. International courts have identified multiple violations of fundamental rights. This is not only a legal problem, it is a moral one. In the case of his Met movement, it's not only about one community. It demonstrates how fragile religious freedom becomes when the state defines acceptable belief and criminalizes dissent. Defending religious freedom does not mean defending a movement. It means defending human dignity, pluralism, and social peace. Religious freedom is not a privilege granted by the state. It's a fundamental right. Protecting it is essential for justice, coexistence, and lasting peace. Thank you very much.
With that, I would like to thank you most sincerely for that lovely reflection, Dr. Ali Unsal. Right. And then now, right, we are going to travel 7,600 kilometers from New York City to Bulgaria, where we are meeting Dr. Marcel Israel, who is going to give us his reflection. He is the board member of Religions for Peace Europe and Bulgaria, and a long-standing Jewish community leader with decades of experience advancing interfaith cooperation and institutional partnership. Over to you, Dr. Marcel Israel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Govender. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, welcome to the panel discussion. Welcome and thank you for coming. As I live in Europe, please permit me to say 2 words about the religious freedom and pluralistic societies in Europe. The situation is the following. Europe is suffering a real moral crisis. Xenophobia, discrimination, and hate are flourishing. Today, this behavior is surprisingly driven by extreme left and some right-wing parties, as it occurs in Germany, Spain, France, Hungary, and other European countries. As I am a citizen of 2 European countries, Spain and Bulgaria, I can compare the situation there and will present later on some different and positive aspects of Bulgaria in this respect. I wish success to our event. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Israel. And I would like to thank all the panelists that have provided such great, thoughtful reflections. We will now move into the moderated discussion segment where I will pose a focused question to each speaker, building on your expertise and contributions in society. I will now start with Professor Dr. Rocio Rodriguez from Chile. And the assigned question to Dr. Rodriguez is, how can sacred text and theological scholarship be used constructively to deepen interreligious understanding rather than division?
Thank you, Dr. Govender. Now I learn how to say it after listening to others.
Perfect.
Theological scholarship and sacred text can deepen interreligious understanding when they are approached as spaces of encounter rather than as weapons of identity. Division does not arise from theology or scripture as such, but from the ways they are interpreted, instrumentalized, and detached from their ethical and communal responsibilities, something that has been mentioned already with my fellow panelists. Let me begin with theological scholarship. Every religious tradition develops its own theological frameworks to articulate identity, interpret revelation, and establish healthy limits on dialogue. This is not a problem. It is, in fact, a strength. Theology helps communities discern why and how they engage with others while deepening their own self understanding, which is not negotiable and it's not necessary to change it. Theology becomes constructive when it recognizes that engaging the religious other is not a threat, but an opportunity for greater clarity about one's own tradition. In this sense, theology can serve as a bridge. It provides the conceptual tools to articulate difference without turning it into hostility. Now, a word about sacred text. The problem is not the scriptures themselves, but the way they are read, interpreted, and mobilized in social and political context. Fundamentalist readings can happen in every tradition and often isolate texts from their historical settings, ignoring internal diversity within the tradition and make it a single interpretation as the authoritative as the only legitimate one. As scholars such as Albert Randall have shown, this kind of literalist and decontextualized readings has frequently been used to justify both internal exclusion and external violence. A constructive engagement with sacred texts requires resisting these reductive approaches. It involves slowing down interpretation, situating texts within their broader canonical, historical, and ethical context, and recognizing that sacred scriptures have always been read in community, not in isolation. When texts are allowed to remain complex, dialogical, and open to interpretation, they are far less likely to be used as instruments of division. So I will stop there and hopefully we will continue the conversation. Thank you.
You so much. That was excellent, a brilliant response to that question. Now, thank you. Let us now turn to another dimension of the discussion. And this time we will speak to Professor Dr. Joan Hernandez Serret from Spain. And the question is, what role can education systems, communication platforms, and media narratives play in preventing religious polarization in pluralistic societies?
Thank you very
Dr.
much. And
Serret.
so, Dr. Govender, the general role is that we must to happen to pillars to shape our perception of one another. And so, as you mentioned, the first vital space is the education system. And so in the families, the space is a primary socialization where we fork our initiative identity. And so in the school represents the second socialization, and it is the stage where the children learn to relate to the other in general terms of society. So they learn how to be and exist within and society and community. And so a diverse school must be a faithful reflection of the social reality, with neither more nor less the diversity than exists in our schools. So the genuine social making in classroom is the most powerful tool to normalize and at the same time to immunize us against the prejudice when the children play and study together, reciprocity, face to face, stop being to abstract concept and become a daily practice that break down caricatures before they solidify into adult hatred. And so, but a part of the education foundation, as you mentioned, there are another very important and ethical challenge, and this is the role of media. Do the format based on the media, usually the format based on brevity and immediacy. the media are often involved to create stereotypes and prejudice in the rise to explain the complex reality in 2 minutes, they result to cognitive shortcuts that dehumanize. And so we must to be aware the language and the concept that they tool, especially and also ours, but this is a potential to challenge also their reality. And so the stereotypes is limited for representing the knowledge where we attribute common general traits to entire group and nulllifying the particularity of individual with absolute expressions such always or never, everyone. So these adverbs are you making a generalization with weakening space to the genuine of others. And so more concretely, in this comment, the media must adopt the proactive preventive actions. I point out 3. News versus opinions. The information must be based on data and verified. Fact checks news clearly distinguish in from opinion piece that often disguise the prejudice as facts. The second is the diversity of voice. As mentioned in my colleagues, the media must open space for a new and distinctive voice, allowing communities to define or to explain themselves. The third is rejection of collective responsibility. Ethical journalists must avoid the language suggesting that an entire community is responsible for individual action on views. So we must also differentiate between the communication space and also what space that we create. In these terms, the interreligious dialogue is very important, as Harvard must say, it's the famous sociologists and theologists people, that we need to create a free space and related space for communications. And so, on the other hand, there are a digital social platform that you asked me, but that we encountered that and know in a protect manner. Here, usually the algorithms often prioritize homogeneous group who like the same thing and highlight the conflict and sensationalization, like is an echo chambers that foster the polarization and radicalization with a critical focus. In this environment, the know that the opponent is seen as someone that we think differently, but as something foreign, outsider, and even evil, eliminating a possibility of empathy. So the conclusion, let's just say that democracy, especially now, we need to create a discipline of freedom, education, and responsible media are the key to shaping the ethical choice that we make every day, guiding us from prejudice to empathy in our interaction. And so we must remember that how we look at the other in our personal choice. So as Gandhi said, we be the change you wish to see in the world. So in plural society, we must choose to spend more energy to understand rather than convincing. So the genuine human attributes, the empathy, love, warmth, are the only beacon that we have and need. That is more or less.
Thank you so much, Professor Serret. Absolutely fantastic. Right, for those of you who have just joined us on this virtual platform, we are observing World Interfaith Harmony Week, and we are participating in a panel discussion organized by the Journalists and Writers Foundation. The topic today is Religious Freedom in Pluralistic Societies, Collective Responsibility in Countering Discrimination, Hate, and Intolerance, where we have a number of esteemed panelists who's talking to this particular topic. Right. Now, from that conceptual lens of Dr. Serret, let's move to the community and lived experience dimension. And we go back to South Africa where we have Ms. Ishka Iraman. And the question that I'm posing to you, Ms. Iraman, right? A simple, straightforward question. How can faith communities, especially youth initiatives and grassroots leadership, strengthen tolerance and social cohesion at community level? Ishka.
Thank you, Dr. Govinda. So I believe that youth involvement in a shared interest and passion equips the youth with vital skills of communication, socializing, and instills confidence in them, which they carry throughout their life. Youth initiatives, especially in faith communities, creates a safe space for the youth to interact. Most faith communities engage in service projects. When the youth become involved in projects like this, they become more compassionate, they learn how to interact with people with respect, and they become better leaders. When they humble themselves, they also empower themselves and become better individuals. They are also able to lead and uplift others when they are given these leadership roles. I believe they also become more aware of the situations and how to interact respectfully and honestly with people. I think grassroots leadership is very essential here in that it provides a platform where the youth are more likely to identify and interact with grassroots leaders as they feel more comfortable. So I think these grassroots leaders as well, they have an important responsibility to guide and teach the youth tolerance and how to be inclusive to other groups. I think they can be encouraged, or this can be encouraged by interfaith initiatives. So we do have service projects, but also there's projects when it comes to like cleanup and just anything for the economy. I think also simple initiatives like movie nights, game nights, anything of that sort where youth can actually interact socially with their peers religiously or on a religious ground. They are taught important values on how to interact and be respectful. Obviously, all these initiatives, they equip the youth with foundational values in the sense that they become better leaders, they have more empathy, they know how to take lead on situations, they become better individuals, which help society. So yeah, thank you, and that's my take on this.
Thank you. Yes, now you've the perspective that you've given connects us directly to our theme of collective responsibility, and that is very, very important. Now, based on that, we move from a very, very hot South Africa to a very cold United States of America, where we go back to Dr. Ali Unsa, and his assigned question is, what ethical principles should guide religious leaders and scholars in countering hate speech while promoting coexistence? Dr. Ali.
Yes, thank you for this important and timely question, Dr. Govender. In pluralistic societies, religious leaders and scholars carry a dual moral responsibility to protect human dignity and to safeguard social peace. Countering hate speech while promoting coexistence is not merely a legal or political task. It is at its core an ethical and spiritual obligation. Today, I would like to highlight 5 key ethical principles that should guide religious leadership in this regard. The first principle is human dignity. The foundation of all ethical engagement must be the recognition of the inherited dignity of every human being, regardless of belief, ethnicity, or worldview. From a faith-based perspective, human dignity is not earned, it's given. Therefore, hate speech is not just social harmful, but morally corrosive, because it strips people of their God-given worth. Religious leaders must consistently affirm that disagreement never justifies dehumanization. The second principle is moral consistency and dignity and integrity. Ethical credibility depends on consistency. If religious figures condemn hate speech directed at their own communities but remain silent, or worse, complicit when others are targeted, moral authority collapses. Integrity requires that we oppose injustice regardless of who the victim is and who the perpetrator may be. Selective ethics do not heal societies, They deepen polarization. The third principle concerns the responsible and disciplined use of language. Words shape realities. Religious discourse must be guided by restraint, wisdom, and accountability, especially in sermons, social media, and public statements. Language that inflames emotions, amplifies fear, or legitimizes exclusion often separates faster than reasoned speech. Silence can sometimes be ethical, but ambiguous or inflammatory language never is. Leaders should ask not only is it true, is this true, but also is this constructive? The fourth principle is justice balanced with compassion. Countering hate speech does not mean ignoring wrongdoing. Ethical leadership requires naming injustice clearly, while doing so without collective blame or demonization. Justice without hearts. Compassion without justice loses credibility. The ethical path lies in holding individuals accountable while refusing to criminalize identities or entire communities. The fifth principle is a commitment to dialogue and share moral ground. Coexistence does not grow from forced tolerance, but from ethical encounter. Religious leaders should actively invest in interfaith dialogue, joint community initiatives, and a shared ethical language around values such as mercy, justice, responsibility, and peace. Dialogue does not require theological compromise, but it does demand moral humility. I think it's enough for me. Thank you very much.
Dr. Ali, and it was so interesting that while you were speaking, the azan in our local community was playing, and it was so interesting. Thank you so much in the background. That was quite a very interesting perspective. And based on that, I'm going to invite our next speaker to respond from their context and experience. And the question is for Dr. Marcel Israel, is from your experience, in European interfaith cooperation, what practical institutional partnerships best strengthen religious harmony across diverse societies? Dr. Marcel Israel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Govender. So the European Interfaith Organization, Religions for Peace Europe, is working and advocating intensively and Europe-wide for religious freedom and against negative movements like Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and hate against immigrants. To comply with this goal, we are working together with some important institutions as partners, like the Senate of Berlin, different churches, universities in multiple countries, parliamentary groups, and others. The national interfaith bodies integrated into this organization, into Religions for Peace Europe, have much more detailed activities. A good example is Religions for Peace Bulgaria. Bulgarian Forum, the name is Bulgarian Forum for Interfaith Dialogue and Partnership. Before the Second World War, Bulgaria was a distinguished, peace-loving country with friendly coexistence among religious and ethnic communities, and a strong and highly positioned civil society. All religious communities have suffered under the harsh communist regime from 1944 to 1989, 45 years, with serious limitations and in some cases, imprisonment or death for some religious leaders. After the political changes in 1989, there is today a brilliant relationship between the religious communities, especially with the Muslims, which is really an achievement. We maintain the same perfect collaboration with other communities like the Bulgarian Orthodox Church, the Catholics, the evangelical churches, and the Jewish community, and others. I would like to emphasize, because we are talking about partnership, I would like to emphasize the term partnership in our title. As the religious members of our forum are professors, doctors, and in general scientists, we are constantly creating partnerships, mostly with universities and the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. We invite religious leaders from different religious denominations to our events, like seminars, webinars, and roundtables. And finally, our most important event is the International Scientific Conference, Harmony in Diversity, or on inter-religious, cultural, and ethnic dialogue, which is held every year on December 10th, the day of the UN Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. The organizers are the State University of Library Studies and Information Technology in Sofia, Bulgaria, and our Bulgarian Forum for Interfaith Dialogue and Partnership. We maintain relationships also with other institutions like embassies and ministries of foreign affairs, of culture, of the interior, and of education and healthcare. These are some of our practical institutional partnerships that could build religious harmony. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Israel. That particular response to the question was excellent. And the same goes to all the other panelists. You've responded so articulately. We really appreciate that. Now, as we approach the final segment, before we take questions from our audience, our virtual audience, I now invite each speaker to share brief closing reflections, pathways forward. In other words, what one takeaway you would like to take from this particular panel discussion, and what one recommendation. So very briefly, because we have a number of questions here, the response is phenomenal. So as we do this final reflection and the pathways forward as we progress towards conceptualizing today's panel discussion, we will also respond to some of those questions, right? So I would like to now first ask Dr. the name, just 1 minute. Let's take a reflection from Professor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Dr. Govender.
Just a short, very brief. Short reflection. Yeah, very brief.
Let's see what I can. Okay. Preventing polarization requires sustained and intentional efforts. It calls for education at all levels, rooted in religious literacy as a long-term social investment. It requires the creation of spaces of encounter, not only within churches, synagogues, mosques, or temples, but also in schools, parks, hospitals, university, and civic institutions, where people can meet one another beyond stereotypes. It demands a commitment to dialogue even when disagreement persists. Let me tell a little bit about Pope Francis, who pointed out that true openness does not mean abandoning one's convictions. Rather, it involves remaining steadfast in one's deepest convictions, clear and joyful in one's own identity, while remaining genuinely open to understanding others, are trusted that dialogue can enrich all sides. So it's not a threat, but as a possibility. In this sense, religious freedom cannot survive on legal protection alone. While laws and policies are indispensable, they are insufficient without the social conditions that allowed freedom to be lived daily. Religious freedom requires social encounters, hospitality, education, and dialogue, and the active involvement of families, faith communities, schools, and civil society in promoting not only tolerance, but hopefully a genuine recognition of all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Rodriguez. And one key takeaway and one recommendation for Professor Serret, what would you like to, what key takeaway from today's panel discussion?
Okay, thank you. For me, the education and the responsibility of the media, because I'm working on that, are the key to shaping an ethical choice that we make every day, guiding us from the prejudice to empathy in our daily interaction. This is the most important thing.
Excellent. And we go to Ishka Iraman, Ms. Ishka Iraman from South Africa. One key takeaway, one recommendation going forward.
Thank you, Dr. Govender. So I think my key takeaway is that everyone has a duty to ensure religious tolerance and avoid discrimination and hate. I encourage everyone to get involved in religious institutions and more so get the children involved. Eventually, they will become more comfortable and they will attend without their parents. I think also once they attend these institutions, they will become better leaders and better adapted to society. One other thing I can say is also education in schools would be much needed. But what needs to happen is religious education needs to be more holistic rather than teaching just one religious subject. I think if the kids or the youth are more holistically educated, they become more enlightened and more tolerant individuals in the future. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Iraman. And Dr. Ali Unsal, your end reflection, what key takeaway from this panel?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Govender. As we come to the end of this panel has shown us that coexistence is not a passive condition. It's an active practice. It is built through dialogue, through cooperation, through shared service, and through standing together in moments of tension and crisis. As we move forward, the real question is not whether we disagree. Differences will remain. The real question is whether we allow disagreement to turn into dehumanization, or whether we allow ethics, law, and conscience to guide our common future. If we choose the second path, then diversity becomes a strength rather than a threat. And faith, scholarship, and civic responsibility can once again become forces for social healing. Thank you all for your insights, your engagement, and your commitment to a more dignified and inclusive future. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Very, very good reflection and a good takeaway for us to take out of this panel discussion here today. And then, Dr. Israel, your final comments and your key takeaway for today.
Thank you. Thank you. Summing up, in fact, some European governments are countering hate and intolerance. An example is the dissolution in 2023 of the extreme right anti-Semitic and Islamophobic party Civita in France. But this is not enough, not satisfactory. We could feel from the valuable presentations today that the faith-based NGOs like our Bulgarian Forum and the other national bodies of Religions for Peace Europe can do a lot in this respect. They can successfully criticize or support governments, parties, political groups, dioceses, and other organizations. So we can do a lot in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. Right, now comes a very, very interesting segment. There's been a number of responses and inputs from our virtual platform. I have a question or a comment from Mr. Lokesh Maharaj. He's from South Africa, the South African Hindu Mahasabha. While it is widely acknowledged that families, educators, faith communities, civil society, and the media all shape public attitudes towards religious diversity, to what extent should political leaders, both those in power and those in opposition, be held primarily responsible for the rise of religious hatred globally? Moreover, how do political rhetoric, policy decisions, and electoral strategies contribute to either mitigating or exacerbating religious tensions? Who would like to answer that? You can put up your hands. Maybe this will ask Dr. Unsal, Dr. Ali Unsal, to answer.
Actually, thank you for this question. If I understood, I can't hear very well actually, but if I understood true, so we are civil societies, religious leaders, and religious organizations. Sometimes we should find two way come together the politics, and we share our projects, our ideas, our critics with them, and we will ask from them to how can I say possibility an opportunity to lead them, to show them our wisdoms, our ideas. So it helps, I think, That's
No,
it.
thank you. Thank you for that. Then I have a question here from Hubert Iwanau to Dr. Joan Hernandez. How can we as society collectively counter discrimination when it comes to laws limiting religious freedom? An example of such laws can be France, where public display of religious clothing and religious symbols is illegal. Dr. Hernandez. How can?
Thank you. This is a good question because sometimes we have a problems and the discrimination when the law to limitate the freedom, religion's freedom, and this is necessary that first of all to join together all the religions that to work together for change this, of course, this kind of laws that to limitate our freedom religions. For example, in our case now in Spain, in Catalonia, I'm working with the parliament. And so we have an internal group, intergroup inside the parliament for changing or review these laws that affect all the religions. The problem is what to affect only on which or only some politician is focused on one religion. This is one the problem, and this is the responsibility of all the religions to work together like a group, because what one law affect in one religions indirectly to affect in all the religions. They have to work together and to identify this is the religion's freedom and to to looking for a solution, especially in the low level, because it's only this is the point that we have to work here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ananda Sarat. Then we have a comment and from Thiru Mudali, Mr. T, who is the director of the Tirukkural Society in South Africa. He states, I agree with Professor Dr. Rocchio that it is civil society that needs transformation, and the exclusion from the lunch table, which I gather means not receiving capital from private sector, especially ethnic minorities, to keep their culture and religion to survive. This is especially true of the Tamil culture and its Samanam philosophy. The Tirukkural is fast disappearing because it is excluded from the lunch table, as you so well put it. So yes, in South Africa, the constitution and government guarantees religious freedom, but business does not fund the Tirukkural philosophy of the Samanam culture. A way was also as to be found to transform the private sector to fund promoting pluralism and religious freedom. From Thiru Mudali, Mr. T, from the Tirukkural Society. Then, Injali Querishi to panelists. Thank you, esteemed panel, for making us all understand the importance of mutual respect and tolerance for all people, promoting harmony, diversity, and inclusion. Humanity is the sun in the solar system of our diverse planets. What an excellent analogy. Thank you so much for that, Injila Qureshi. Right, so as we progress towards the end, is there any, I would like to give an opportunity for anybody, right, on this platform who would like to say something. We have a few more minutes before we round off. Is there anything that you would like to add to this interesting panel? All I can say is that I'm receiving many, many comments here from people who are thanking the panelists for a rich repertoire of knowledge and experience in the religious sector, and your utterances today have created such a galvanizing type of situation here today as we celebrate or observe Interfaith Harmony Week. So yes, today's discussion, distinguished hosts, panelists, and participants, today's discussion has reaffirmed that protecting religious freedom and countering intolerance is not the responsibility of any single institution. That came out very, very clear here today. It is a shared societal commitment. Across our inputs here today, several themes have stood out. The centrality of dignity and rights, the role of education and ethical public speech, the importance of interfaith engagement that moves beyond symbolism into everyday lived practice, and the need for practical partnerships that build trust across communities. That came out very, very, very clear. So all I can say, using another analogy, pluralistic societies are like orchestras. Many instruments, different sounds, but harmony emerges when each voice is respected and guided by shared values. And I think today, in this panel, with the diverse opinions that we had today, we definitely have that orchestra producing a beautiful music that the society will learn. Right, so before I round up, there's a few things, a very important mention, dear colleagues. The Journalists and Writers Foundation, throughout the year, hosts a number of innovative programs that promote social cohesion, harmony, tolerance, peace, dignity. So all their projects are geared towards those ideals. One such program is a call for global youth voices. Digital Interface Storytelling Campaign 2026. The youth perspectives on building inclusive societies through dialogue, action, and change. The top 3 selected submissions will receive, as you can see on the screen, a whopping $100 each as prize money. So here's an opportunity to submit your video. All the information, the themes are migration, diversity, and social inclusion. Another theme is International Year of Volunteers for Sustainable Peace. The third theme is Virtual Tour of Faiths. This is quite an interesting opportunity when people do not have an opportunity of visiting either a mosque, a church, a temple, or whatever. So this competition provides an opportunity for the youth to use technology in order to allow people from other faiths to visit specific faiths, and that is very, very interesting. So here's a very good opportunity for young people to earn a prize of $100 by participating in the Digital Interfaith Storytelling Campaign. So this is one project. If you go on all the digital platforms of the Journalists and Writers Foundation, including their website, you will find a number of very, very interesting programs. One very, very interesting annual program is the Sustainable Development Goals Project, where an opportunity is provided for people all over the world to submit projects which they believe are addressing the sustainable development goals, because 2030 is around the corner, right? And governments and structures are finding difficulty in finding suitable mechanisms to attain the SDG goals by 2030. So the Journalists and Writers Foundation has this very, very interesting project which is called Pioneers in SDGs Awards. And this awards take place in September, at the towards the end of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals program. And then what happens here is organizations are afforded an opportunity of sending their projects in a form of a submission with videos and some portfolio of evidence to show what projects that they're doing that addresses the sustainable development goals, whether it is food insecurity, whether it is green revolution, anything where they are addressing sustainable development goals. There is a panel of experts that will evaluate, and I must say annually there are hundreds of projects that are submitted, very, very innovative projects that the panelists that are evaluating the projects find it extremely difficult to evaluate because there's so many interesting projects. So here you have the first prize is $2,000 cash prize to the organization. The second prize is $1,000, and the third prize is $500. And there's a whole lot of other prizes for innovation and originality and so on. So we have for example, the Innovation Excellence Award, the Stakeholder Engagement Award, the Scope Achievement Award, Transferable Impact Award, Young Changemakers Award, People Choice Award, and the Changemakers Award. So colleagues, please, those of you who are on this platform, please market this opportunity because this comes once in a lifetime. So thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an absolute delight being here today and facilitating and moderating the session. I would like to thank, firstly, all the panelists. Your inputs, your reflections, your responses to the questions, and your final takeaways were very valuable. It will give Mr. Mehmet Kelig and Semre and Priyanka Chal from the Journalists and Writers Foundation an ideal opportunity to consolidate all the information that was provided on this platform, and they will submit it to the stakeholders that are going to find value in today's discussion. So I'd like to thank firstly all the panelists for your opportunity that you have created here today and the platform that you have provided such meaningful inputs. And I would also like to thank all the participants that joined on this virtual platform. Your presence here is a clear indication that you hold religion and discrimination and so on close to your heart, and you would like us to strive towards finding opportunities for a better society and a much more safer society to live in, where everybody is human again. Because like I always say, there was a great Indian philosopher that once said that man has learned to fly in the sky like a bird by building these huge aircrafts that we travel regularly with. He has also learned to swim in the sea like a fish by building these huge cruise liners. But man has still need to learn to live on this earth like a human being. And I think the insights that you have provided here today, colleagues, have created that opportunity for man to live on this earth like a better human being. So I would like to thank the Journalists and Writers Foundation for once again providing this platform through arranging this panel discussion. Your efforts have not been in vain. Today's discussion has clearly opened the eyes of many people, and I'm sure that we will be once again living as human beings again on this earth. So with those comments, I would like to thank you all, and I would wish you, all the best as you strive towards making this world a better place to live in. Thank you so much, and thank you to the organizers for the administration of this panel discussion. It was superb. Thank you and bye.
Thank you very much.